Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into it. All right, the most ruthless fan base. Who is it? There could be a lot of choices in this. I've got a top three, and I'll rank them, but there are so many you need to consider in this endeavor. There's a lot of teams out there that have fan bases that are ruthless. There is one in particular that's the most ruthless, but there are several that deserve to be discussed, and we will do that in this video. Now, I've only done one video in the last 3 days, ever since my Vols got beat by Purdue and that big old Goliath they got in the middle.
Oh my God! Oh my God.
Total mismatch. It was the one team I didn't want to play in the NCAA tournament. We got stuck with them in the Elite Eight. But anyway, we still had a great season. God, that big old Edie. I never see him again. It'll be too soon. But anyway, let's get into something that's a little bit more entertaining, and that's the most ruthless fan bases. And there was a video on YouTube about this, and also Zach Reagan of A to Z Sports discussed it. And a lot of people have the Vols as the most ruthless, but we'll see as we go through this. J.D. Piquel brought this up and talked about it, and let's kind of see what he has to say.
Who is the most ruthless college football fan base on social media? You open Twitter, you open Instagram, and this fan base is just continuing to get after it. And I have a couple that I want to get into here. This is not an all-encompassing list, just so we're on the same page. But I think the far and away answer across the board was Tennessee. And it wasn't just like Tennessee fans were raising their hands and saying,
all right, so he's already ranked us number one. I could not agree more. I happen to be a part of that fan base, and I can tell you, when I really noticed that Tennessee was not a team or a fan base that you wanted to mess with, we saw it when Lane Kiffin decided to sneak out of town in the middle of the night.
Oh, there they go. There they go.
After he'd been there 1 year, he was the new hire after Philip Fulmer. We'd had a good run with Fulmer. He finally, like every coach except for maybe Nick Saban, eventually has to be fired because that's the life of a head coach. So we hired Lane Kiffin. Comes in, first year, he does pretty good, but everybody's excited. They're fired up about him, and everybody treats him great. And then he sneaks out in the middle of the night because he's the number 7 choice to go out and be the head coach at USC. And needless to say, we did not handle it well. And Lane Kiffin has paid for that ever since and will continue to do so. I never cut him any slack on this channel, as you know. I don't take anything away from the fact that he's got a very good offensive mind and has had success finally. But he lived in the desert for 10 years after that. Nobody would touch him because they all knew he was a backstabber and a job jumper. But anyway, that was the first taste. Then the other thing that they like to talk about a lot is the Greg Schiano almost hire. And that was where they were going to bring in a guy that really, I don't think the fan base was very excited about. They didn't want him. He had struggled at Tampa Bay. He wasn't really a player's coach. There was the issue at Penn State, all of those things. And the fan base just revolted against the athletic director and how they felt like he was kind of a puppet and being controlled by certain donors. And he wound up getting fired. Now, we went through a bad stretch there for a while with Jeremy Pruitt. And, of course, we had Pat Forday out there just pouring salt in the wound every chance he could because he was furious about the Greg Schiano. I guess they're like best friends or something. But anyway, that was like the second thing. And then if that didn't convince you, the NCAA coming after Nico, that was the coup de grace. And we went after the NCAA like you cannot believe.
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home. Stand by.
Oh, yeah. We blew up their Death Star and finished them off, and we warned them and warned them. We had an offer for them. They could have walked away from this. They chose not to do it, and I'll show you that offer.
Before we let you leave, your commander must cross that field, present himself before this army, put his head between his legs, and kiss his own arse.
I thought that was a perfectly good offer. They should have taken it. They wouldn't have had to take the defeat in the courts, which up in Greenville, Tennessee, they got their butts handed to them with a preliminary restraining order, and they're going to lose the case. The judge has already told them you're correct. So that was kind of the final straw of people realizing you might not want to mess with this fan base. Now, there's plenty of other fan bases out there that are really brutal. And I got to think Florida State. I'll tell you what, they got totally screwed by the college football playoff. And it really wasn't you could blame the committee, but they felt like because they'd lost their starting quarterback, even though they'd gone 13-0, won every game they were supposed to win, and really overcome some difficult things, and they were a very good team. They didn't get in because they had lost their quarterback, and they had struggled the last 2 games. Like any team, you lose your quarterback, you're going to struggle. That's just the way it is.
He ain't lying.
So they kind of went off on the college football playoff. Even their attorney general in Florida is working on suing the college football playoff committee. And they blame ESPN. I personally blame the commissioner of the ACC, who didn't allow teams to go from 4 to 12 teams like we were supposed to for the playoff. Had they gone from 4 to 12, they would have been in. It wouldn't have mattered. They'd have been the 5th team. They would have got home court advantage or home field advantage, and they would have been fine. They might not have made it very far without their quarterback, but at least they wouldn't have felt cheated, which they were. They did everything that you could possibly do to get in the playoff, winning every possible game, including their conference championship, and got creaked by 2 teams that got in that had 1 loss each, which was Alabama and Texas. So a lot of people have learned about that, and one in particular has really learned the hard way, and that's Herb Kirkstreet, however you want to say it. He has actually apologized to FSU. He had kind of ripped them and called them all kinds of names.
I was not exactly right.
Said he drew the ire after he said that they'd formed like a mob mentality because of the college football playoff and all that. And Herbstreit really, he took it from the from the FSU fans for months. And I think he's finally had enough, and he apologized, which is, he should have just left them alone. They were hurting. You don't go up to a fan base that's hurting and really struggling and pretty much tell them, hey, you need to shut up. You got what you deserve. You're not very good. You don't do that. That's a big mistake. And he found out about it. So FSU is not a fan base you want to mess with. Now, there are a bunch of others. I think Alabama would definitely be in the running, but they've been so good for so long with Nick Saban that they haven't really had to show their teeth that much. But I'm telling you, you get Alabama, you get on the wrong side of them, they're going to go nuts on you.
I don't give a piss about nothing but the Tide, baby.
Don't give a piss about nothing but the Tide.
I love America and I love the Tide, baby. And I love Will and the Down.
Yeah, they don't give a piss about anything but the Tide. You might as well know that. So that's a fan base you got to keep your eye on. Another one that really we have not heard from in a while, and that's because they've gone into apathy, which is really a bad place to be for a fan base, and that's Florida Gators. They are a vicious fan base when they get across with you. But right now, because they've had 3 losing seasons in a row, they're not really there, but they'll be back.
I'll be back.
You might as well just know that. They will be back, and they will become very ruthless again. You can count on it. Now, there's a team that I've really noticed will go after you if you mess with them, and that's Ohio State. And J.D. Piquel talked about it a little bit, and especially during the whole Michigan sign stealing thing. Now, I covered that heavily, and I noticed the Ohio State people were very, very angry about it. They felt extremely cheated. And I heard from the Michigan fans, too, which is another ruthless fan base. And they really circled the wagons around their team and wound up winning the national title.
It's got to be America's team.
And Connor Stallions, who had to be the assistant coach of the year, had to be. Yeah, he's America's coach. I think Connor's America's coach. But those are 2 fan bases out of the Big Ten that will flat let you have it. They don't care. Then he also talked about LSU. That's a Louisiana thing. I'm just telling you, Louisiana's like their own country down there, and they don't give a crap. They're real weird about their food, too. They feel like they have the only good food in the world, period. And they feel that way about their team. They're very territorial down there, and they love their football teams, both of them, not just the college team, also the Saints. They love the Saints. So there's a fan base you don't want to mess with. Now, Georgia is one that can go crazy on you, but again, they've won a couple of national titles. They're not really feeling it. But Eric Ainge stirred the hornet's nest a couple of years ago and said, oh, well, Georgia's not very loud down there. They're a piece of cake. He found out. It was like, Eric, you might not want to mess with that group of individuals. So Georgia's another one that'll get a little crazy on you. And there's a bunch out there. Really, a lot of the SEC clubs are that way. But I think ranking the Vols number one, I don't think there's any question. They're number one. Number two right now is probably FSU. Number three, Ohio State's probably number three. Alabama would be number three if they were struggling, and they might struggle again. If Kalen DeBoer doesn't work out, you'll find out how ruthless they are. I promise you. They're not going to be magnanimous.
Normally, I wouldn't pull for Tennessee if they was playing Iraq. It's just not in my nature. But going forward, I hope Tennessee don't lose a ball game. Because I want so bad for Tennessee to beat Georgia in whatever fashion they have to do it. I don't care if it's bad, good, ugly, in a hurry. I don't care. All right, beat Georgia, get your ass to Atlanta. Get your ass to Atlanta with a different officiating crew. A different officiating crew. The officiating crew determined the outcome of that ball game 100%. Alabama was never leaving Neyland Stadium with a win. They was not going to have it. That ain't a close ball game. That is not a close ball game without that officiating crew whatsoever.
I don't even know if that's the right word. But anyway, they're not going to be cool about things. And nor is Georgia. That's another team that if they start struggling for any reason, you'll find out. So those are teams that I've thought about as far as the most ruthless fan bases. And I will get over this loss to Purdue. I don't know when. It won't be today. And it probably won't be tomorrow, but eventually I will. Just why'd we have to play Purdue with that 9-foot guy? 7'4", 300. What a pain.
Damn it, I hate that Bob Parker.
Okay, there has got...
Anyway, if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Let's continue to cover all this good college football stuff, my Vols and the SEC and Big Ten, whatever comes across the path. And if you've not subscribed, it's right here on your right, my left. Hit this little button. I would appreciate it. And right over here is the most recent video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy based on your viewing history. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.